Alright, today I'm going to talk to you about designing a website that really sells. There are several pointers that I can give, and I've determined these pointers not by taking a wild guess or by reading internet marketing books or watching YouTube videos. But I've learned all these things really by trial and error. And what's important to understand about that trial and error is that in the process, I've had the opportunity to make over $20 million worth of mistakes because I've spent over $20 million getting good search engine ranking on Google, whether it be through the Google AdWords program or whether it be through organic search engine ranking. So fortunately for you, you don't have to risk $20 million to find out the things that you need to have in your web page and the way that your web page needs to be laid out in order to really sell products and services online. So let's get into it. The first thing that you're going to need to know is that if you're not on the search engine at all, there's no way anybody's going to find you online. So you can have the greatest product or service in the world, but if nobody finds you, you're never going to make sell number one. So there's several ways that you can promote your website. You can promote it through your business cards, your brochures, you can have a car magnet, whatever. But those things aren't really going to drive a lot of people to your site. The one thing that drives a ton of people to your site are search engines. And of course, search engines are dominated by Google. A recent study shows that 80% of all searches are done by Google, but I can tell you by my own calculations, it's actually even higher than that. I believe it's closer to 90% of all searches are done on Google. So when we're talking about search engines, we're talking about Google for the most part. Another study shows that over 85% of all people now, when looking to buy a product or service, start at a search engine. So it's very important that you're able to get on to search engines, and when I say search engines, I mean primarily Google. The next thing that's important to remember is that the average person online will only wait 7 seconds for your page to load. So if they do find your page, regardless of where they found that from, whether it be Google or otherwise, if your page takes longer than 7 seconds to load, nobody will ever know about your product or service, and you'll never make a single sale. So, what are some of the mistakes that people make that cause their page to take longer than 7 seconds to load? Well, the most obvious things are that they built their page and included several extremely large images. If you go out and today with your camera phone or with a high-powered digital camera, DSLR or otherwise, and you snap a photo and then you just upload that photo to your website, that photo is typically over 1 megabyte. So on a standard high-speed internet connection, a person might get 10 megabytes per second, 20 megabytes per second. There are a lot faster connections, but most people are really only getting 10 to 20 megabytes per second. So if you've got and then those speeds don't translate into real life time because you still have processing time and things like that. The bottom line is if your page is a megabyte, it's way too big. You need to try to keep your page under 500 kilobytes if you want it to show up quickly, and if at all possible, keep it to under 100 kilobytes. This is going to give you better search engine ranking, and it's also going to make your page load quickly, and so you're going to get more visibility. Well, how does it help with better search engine ranking? Simple. Google's biggest problem is controlling costs. In order to go out and to crawl the entire web and send a piece of software, which is called a spider, across every single website. It takes a tremendous amount of computing power simply because there's over 20 billion pages that they've indexed or something like that. So they've got to keep 20 billion pages not only in the search engine results, but up to date. So they continually send this little piece of software called a spider to your website. And that spider reports back to the mothership, so to speak, which is Google's data center, and then their computers have to organize those results. Well, when you're talking about 20 billion different results and counting every day and keeping them all up to date, this is taking a tremendous amount of computing power. That's why you may have read in the paper about Google starting a new data center in your area or some part of the world. They have data centers all over the world. These are huge warehouses with stack after stack of computers. In fact, they're nothing but computers. They're typically built in an area where they can get affordable electricity, since that's their #1 cost. So the bottom line is this: in order for Google to crawl your website, index it, if you have a slow loading page, not only are you reducing the number of people that will wait to see the page load, but you're also telling Google that you're slow and they're going to move on because it's costing them money to wait at your website to crawl. Their crawler needs to move on to the next site, or their spider needs to move on to the next site. So page speed is really a huge pillar of any successful online campaign. And that's why too you see a lot of pages online that are not aesthetically pleasing. They're not real beautiful designs, but they're hugely successful. If you haven't looked at Berkshire Hathaway's website, for example, you'll see it's about the most basic website you can get, but for more than one reason it's wildly successful. And I guarantee it shows up high in the search results for anything that has to do with Berkshire Hathaway. So getting back to your page, another common mistake, the first common mistake, if you remember, was people that put large images on their page. They snap a photo with their camera phone or their digital camera, and they don't reduce those photos. You need to reduce those photos in an image editor or compress them or something, get them small. Just make the photo small. Use an image editor. Use something like, there's a software called PicSizer that I use. It brings them down to 640 by 480. That's a good size. Most monitor resolutions are around 1280 by 720 these days, so you can put a 640 by 480 photo into a page and still have a room to work with that's going to display on a monitor. We'll get to that in a minute. The other mistake is they do their site in Flash, or they put a large audio file or video on the page that doesn't stream properly. Anything that has to load before showing your content, like Flash, is going to slow down your page, and it's going to stop people from visiting your site. So Flash is not an option if you're serious about being online. And it's not Flash. Same problems apply to Flash. One is it takes an extremely long time to load the page, and then two, it's not search engine friendly. When you have Flash is essentially a sequence of images. Those images are embedded into an animation framework. So what that means is that if you write an article and it's all in Flash, it's got all kinds of great little text and tidbits in it, but Google doesn't read Flash. It's like looking at an image. Robots aren't smart enough yet to look at pictures and describe the pictures. We just don't have that level of artificial intelligence yet. What we do have is robots that can take a series of ones and zeros, which is essentially text, which is why all the pages on web starts are done in HTML, because it's easy reading for the spider. Easy reading for the spider means a lower cost in acquiring data, reporting that data back to the data center, and organizing the search results. So it ends up meaning better search results for you. Flash is just not an option in any way, shape, or form. It's going to take longer for your page to load, and it's not compatible with search engines. I know some of the competitors out there say that it is, but they're using a workaround, and Google doesn't like workarounds. You can look that up, figure that all day. That Google doesn't like anybody that tries to work around or game their system or do anything to manipulate their algorithms and their search results. So getting by page speed, the next thing is once someone does end up on your page, the page does load, and it hopefully takes less than 7 seconds for your page to load. They need to see a concise headline to tell them they're at the right place. So if they did a search on Google, and we'll use the example of widgets. I don't know why nobody actually ever shops for widgets, but we're going to use the example of widgets. If I search for blue widgets on Google, and then I come to your website, and I see 2 paragraphs of text, I see 4 photos of what looks like different factories and, you know, office buildings, and, you know, I see all this great little information, but I don't see anything that says blue widgets. I came to your page because I thought you were a place that either told me information or sold blue widgets or whatever. So this brings me to my next point, which is you need to have that concise headline. Right across the top of the home page or the front page, you should have a headline that says something like the lowest prices for blue widgets on the internet, using the example blue widgets. And then if you're selling them, I'm assuming you're selling blue widgets in this example. But whatever the case is, some headline that lets somebody know, just like a newspaper. You know, a newspaper headlines are designed a certain way to stick out, to be read. You want your page designed in a way to be read, and you want your headline to echo the reason why the person came to the website. Now, if you're selling a ton of different items, then you need to do this for every single page, and then you need to have the people come from the search results for that specific page and then go to that specific headline. So, for example, maybe I want red widgets. Well, if I have a whole page dedicated to blue widgets, then that's great, and I need to have a whole page dedicated to red widgets, and I need that to come from the search engine, you know, to be found on the search engine and people to come from there, and then I need the headline there to say red widgets. So you need a concise headline to remind people that they're on the right website, because once they're on the website, if they don't see that, there's so many other websites out there, they're going to click the back button, which, by the way, is the most popular button in the browser according to researchers. So you want to do anything but have them click that back button, basically. And so that'll bring me to my next point, which is you need to have a clear call to action. What is a call to action? Well, a call to action is a button. It can be a phone number. It can be really anything you want it to be, but it's just telling the person who's visiting your website the next step they need to take in order to get what they want. So if I was selling blue widgets, I would maybe have a big button that said, click here to buy blue widgets now. It'd be hard not to understand what I needed to do in that scenario if I want to buy blue widgets. Now, maybe you're not selling things online. Maybe you're selling services. Maybe what you're selling requires a phone call or a lead or whatever. So you could have the call to action be, call us at 1-800 whatever, or whatever your phone number is. But I can tell you that that's kind of a weak offer. I'm going to help give you some ideas on how you can really make the meter move when it comes to driving online sales here in a minute. In fact, I'm going to tell you the one secret that really nobody knows, but is well, some people know it, but they're not willing to share it because it's so powerful that it really allows any business to be transformed into an online business and make money. And I'll be sharing that with you in just a moment. But your call to action is that concise button, that phone number. It's the what do I do next? It's the answer to the question, what do I do next? And you want to make sure that call to action is viewable without scrolling. So the smallest computer screens on the market are 600 pixels tall. So if you if you know how to measure pixels, or you can take a screenshot or whatever, and you can use an image editor to measure pixels, you don't want your pixels to be more than, or you don't want your call to action to be more than 600 pixels down the page, or the person who's visiting your web page will have to scroll to see your call to action. And if they have to scroll to see your call to action, they will probably never find it, because people don't generally like to scroll, and they don't generally assume that the critical information on a page is somewhere buried down on the bottom of the page. So now, that being said, I'm revisiting screen resolutions. The most popular screen resolutions right now are something like 1366 by 720 or 1280 by 720, something like that. I'd have to check the stats. They change all the time. Basically, the bigger the monitors get on average and the higher their resolution, then the more of your web page will show without scrolling. So if you have somebody with, you know, like on my desk, I've got a 27-inch iMac, so the resolution on things like 1920 by 1280 or something like that. Anyway, I can see pretty much the entire web page of any web page, unless I really, unless it has a tremendous amount of content. So it's easy to design web pages for me, but if you're on a netbook, then you only have 600 pixels. Your viewable area on your screen is only 600 pixels tall. So what I suggest is design for the smallest screens. Don't design for the biggest screens. If you design for the biggest screens, then you will only get people with the biggest screens. If you design for the small screens, you'll get everybody. Okay? So let me go back to the one secret, the one key that so many people fail to realize when creating a website, and this pretty much makes or breaks whether someone's successful online. And that's when you do finally get a site visitor, whether you paid for advertising or got search engine ranking, or they came off your business card or brochure, you need to have some way to get that person's contact information and build a database of prospects or leads. The easiest way to do that is to add a form to your page, and the easiest way to add a form is to use WebStarts, because the form builder is built right into the design tools. But let me tell you a little bit about this form. Number one, people will not fill out this form if you don't give them a reason to fill out the form. Just having a form on your page isn't going to get anybody to fill out the form. Number two, nobody wants to read your newsletter. So, you know, whether maybe you're offended by that, because your newsletter might have really great content, but unless you can tell them some compelling reason why your newsletter is valuable. I see so many people that put forms on their page. It's like, subscribe to our newsletter. It's the question is really, do I want more spam or not? And of course I don't want more spam. If your information's that great, you'll have it on a blog, and I'll come to your site and read it that way. So here's the key. The key is you need to offer your site visitor something of tremendous perceived value that hopefully costs you little to nothing, and give it to them for free in exchange for their contact information. And okay, so the key is, again, and it's so important to listen carefully to this, the key is, again, to give something away that costs you little or nothing in exchange for contact information, something of high perceived value, so something that your potential client would really value. And it's up to you to think of what that is for your business or your business category, but it's important to keep this in mind. When you're asking for their contact information, the more information you ask for all at once, the less likely they are to give you any information. So it's a good rule of thumb to ask for the absolute minimum amount of contact information in exchange for that item of high perceived value. Well, what is the absolute minimum? For me, in my business, the absolute minimum is an email address and a name. If I have your name and your email address, then I feel good about my chances of converting a fair number of people to becoming my paid clients and converting them from prospects. If I ask for the phone number, I personally don't make a lot of calls, but the more information I ask for, again, the fewer people altogether I get. So if I ask for the phone number, I'm likely to run away people. I'm also likely to get a lot of phone numbers that aren't valid, and that could be a time waster if you're going to call those phone numbers. If you want to ask for more than just the name or the email address, like the phone number or their physical address or their business category or something else, then what I recommend you do is ask the person for the minimum in the first step, and then later on ask them for more information. So for example, on the home page you might say, to receive this item of high perceived value, please provide your email address, your name and your email address. Then the next step says, in order to make sure that this is getting into the right person, going to the right person, whatever, we would like your phone number and your physical address. And then you could even have a third option where, you know, you drill down, get even more data, like, you know, a full survey, like what's your business category, or it just depends on your industry. You have to use your head a little bit and come up with something creative and compelling, which is really the answer to the question. So let's review what we've done so far. So far, we've created a web page that we've submitted to the search engines. That web page is super fast. It's not built in Flash because Flash won't get you search engine rankings, and it won't load quick enough for your viewers to see it. They need to see a concise headline that reminds them or tells them they're on the right website. You need to have a clear call to action that's available to your site visitors without them having to scroll. And then you need to ask them for contact information, and in exchange for giving that contact information to you, you should be offering them something of high perceived value that hopefully costs you little or nothing, and you should be asking for the absolute minimum amount of contact information on the first step. So we'll continue shortly. Okay, so the next thing that you want to have with your website really is a good email marketing follow-up program, because now that we have their name and their email address, the prospect's name and email address, we have them a lead, we need to convert them into our client. So that means follow-up emails, and let me tell you why follow-up emails are so important. A number of studies have been done over the years, and they have determined that it's going to take, or it takes on average, a prospect to be contacted 7 times before they're willing to do business with you. So that means that your prospect is going to have to hear from you at least 7 times before, on average, any of them will do business with you at all. And if you're relying on people just coming to your website and punching in their credit card information and doing business with you, then you're delusional, because most people, and especially on the internet, don't want to do business with someone that they don't know or they don't feel they can trust. So in order for them to feel like they can trust you, you're going to have to contact them at least 7 times. How can you contact them 7 times if you, by the way, never got their name or their email address or any contact information from them at all? So that's why earlier when I was talking about, using your phone number as a call to action, I felt that it was weak. Why is it weak? Because somebody's going to come to your site, they see your phone number, you don't have any credibility with them. You never established any credibility. And because you never established any credibility and you haven't followed up with them, they're just not going to do business with you. They're going to move on to the next website. You know, there's something like 1 trillion web pages online, and they're sorting through them all, and they're giving each one 3 or 4 seconds worth of attention. And you didn't make them a compelling offer to engage. You didn't get their contact information, and so don't be surprised when you're getting zero business from your website whatsoever. I mean zero. I mean nothing, because you're not offering them anything that distinguishes you from anyone else in the marketplace. So keeping that in mind, let's get back to email follow-ups. Now you need to send them several email follow-ups. The first email follow-up needs to come right away. Why? It needs to go instantly. Here's why. Because right now you're top of mind to them. If they're looking for your product or service and they found you on a search engine, they're looking to buy it right now. So you've got to contact them right now while they're thinking about it. It's like the expression goes, strike while the iron is hot. You know, while the client is looking for your product or service, you need to make your best possible pitch to them that you're the right one to go with. And that's going to be immediately after they've completed your form to get your product of high perceived value. So you're definitely going to need a way to capture that email and follow up with them. That's the next step. You're going to need to contact them at least 7 times. So you're going to have a follow-up email string, and you're going to need to send your most powerful email out as your first email. So your best offer should be your initial offer. And that offer, by the way, should be time sensitive to introduce a sense of urgency to your prospect. Okay, so we left off talking about sense of urgency. And sense of urgency is critical because you have to give the prospect a reason to close a deal with you at the moment that they're engaged in the process. If you just have a deal that's available all the time, they can come back and get it. You've done all the other things right in the sales process. But you know what? There's just really no reason to make a commitment and come to a decision today. So what you want to do is you want to give people a compelling reason why they need to come to a decision right now. And the best way to do that is just have a time-sensitive offer to induce sense of urgency. So let me give you an example. If you order with me over the phone right now, I will give you this price. Once we hang up, it goes back to regular price. Or if you're talking about emails, you could say, you know, if you order this today, then you're going to save half off or something like that. Or if you order it today, then you're going to get a free bonus, so on and so forth. I like to use half off a lot because, you know, it's easy for people to calculate 50% off. If you give them 35% off or 15% off or 48% off or whatever, they just don't like to do math in their head. Everybody knows that 50% is half. So if I told you I was selling something for $100 and I said it was half off, you'd know $50 immediately in your head was the price of the item. And so I really like half off. But anyway, you need a sense of urgency to close any deal. And so in review, we talked about going from once you have your page designed, you've captured your leads, you're now sending follow-up emails because only one or it takes 7 times on average to contact a person before they'll do business with you. You've captured their name and email address minimum. You're sending regular follow-up emails that have sense of urgency. By the way, don't be afraid to use sense of urgency on your actual pages to do things like have the client complete your call to action. So, for example, buy now and save, you know, buy now and get a free bonus, buy now and get free shipping today only, you know, anything like that is a great sense of urgency technique on the web. So moving along to our next step, we now that you have those prospects and you're sending them regular emails, let's go back to talk about your page design and how you can build credibility, because you're going to build credibility in these emails, and in a short while I will reveal exactly how your emails need to be written in order to really convert, and you don't want to miss that information. It's really critical, and it can increase your conversion rates by up to 80%. So you want to stay tuned for that information. But going back to your home page, let's talk about some other things that you can put on your home page, because people tend to not have an idea about what content to put on their home page. There are a number of things that need to go in that home page or landing page or on your web pages. Some of those things are going to be related to strictly getting good search engine ranking, and what we call that is search engine optimization. And you'll hear a lot in the industry the acronym for that being used, which is SEO. So anytime someone uses the phrase SEO, that's short for search engine optimization. And search engine optimization are techniques that will help you get better ranking on Google or other search engines. And what I mean by techniques is there are certain things you can do to your page to make sure that Google is reading it correctly, that the information that they're reading is relevant to your product or your service, and that it's in a neat order in which Google can consume. But we'll get to more on that later. Some other things that I like to talk about on the homepage. One is many times I run into people that want to make their logo the center of their presence online, and that's really a terrible strategy, because although the logo does serve a purpose for name recognition, it's not the feature of the business, and it's really not. It really should be off to the side. It really should be out of mind. Nobody really cares about your logo per se itself, but you want to build that brand, you want to build that imagery, and you do that through a consistent look and feel and through your logo. And we'll talk about that in a moment, your look and feel in general. But don't make your logo the center of the focus. A great place for the logo is the top left of the page. Make that very small, as small as you can possibly get it. It's really something that you're just trying to make a subconscious impact about. And speaking of that, I have a whole session that I do on logo design, and it's essentially how to design logos that are memorable, readable, and one other thing. So once you have a logo, and by the way, I call this the 3 R's of a logo, but this is information you can use when designing a logo or creating the logo. It should be these 3 things, and I call them the 3 R's. Rememberable, I don't even know if that's a word. Rememberable, readable, and irrelevant. So rememberable means that they're easy to remember. Your logo should be easy to remember. Readable means that they should be able to read whatever is on your logo. If it's text, that you should be able to read that. And then lastly is relevant. So your logo, if possible, should have something that cues or reminds them of what your business is about. So maybe you have a dog grooming business and you have a cute little puppy inside a circle, and it says something like Joe's Dog Grooming, and anyway, that would be, the dog would have to be interesting enough to be rememberable, and the text would have to be readable, and then the whole image is relevant to the type of business, so it engages them and reminds them of the type of business that you are. So those are some tips about logos, but the logo is minimalistic on a web page. It goes in the top left hand corner. It's probably the best place for it. I have seen it in other locations. It's not the only location you can display a logo, but just to get it out of the way and to put it in the subconscious. Then to the right of that is an area that I like to leave for secondary things, even though it's in the top middle of the page. And by the way, people read from left to right, so you already know that. So you don't want, generally speaking, you want to put your most important things on a page starting from the top left-hand corner and then working down, because that's where people are trained to read from. I know I just told you to put your logo there and that it wasn't important, but that's why you put a small logo there. Generally, people just kind of blank out that very top area, and the reason why is the area immediately to the right of where I'm suggesting you put your logo is an area that is typically reserved for what's called banner blindness. Banner blindness is an area that people don't recognize consciously because they're so used to seeing an advertisement there, and there are so many advertisements across each website that go in the middle top section of a page. So that area really should be something secondary. And going from there, let's talk about your color scheme, because your color scheme, one, should match your logo. You should have a consistent color scheme across your entire marketing effort. So all your business cards, your brochures, car magnets, anything that's any ads that you display in publications, you should try to match the theme with your logo and the color scheme. So let's talk about colors for a minute. Every color in the world has a subconscious, triggers a subconscious thought process or feeling inside people. There's been a number of studies that show this, and you can look them up online if you want to know more about them, or if you want to see some very specific reactions that people generate to certain colors. But generally speaking, on the web, you don't want to use any color that is difficult to read, because you're looking at the screen, it should be readable, and we'll get into some very powerful information about creating a very readable website shortly. But for the time being, just concerning colors, black text on a white background is very readable, so that's a good choice anytime that you're creating something. White text on a black background is more difficult to read, but it's not the worst. But in all cases, you pretty much want to avoid the color yellow. Yellow really isn't readable on a white background or a black background or any background in between. In fact, for the web, yellow is just a terrible color. If you have yellow in your logo, I suggest that you tweak it a little bit and make it more of a gold tone or more of a mustard color, so that it has a little bit more contrast between the backdrop of most screens. So anyway, what do the colors mean? Well, white means purity. So purity is good when it comes to the web, because if you're on a site and it's all white, it's going to make you think purity. Purity is correlates with innocence, and you don't want people thinking that you're a scam. And if you make your background black and everything seems dark and dreary, then it tends to trigger emotions and reactions in human beings that make them think that you're shady or scam or something like that. So you want to try to avoid those types of looks. I generally try to keep it light and bright when selling on the internet. If you're trying to, I know a lot of photographers that have websites. If you're doing a lot of photos look great with a black backdrop because it's high contrast. And I understand that there are some good uses for the color of black, so I actually really enjoy the color black, and I think it makes for a beautiful looking website. But if I'm selling products specifically, I think white is a better choice for a backdrop. So what does black mean? Well, I just said black is a little bit more, it's actually authoritative is the word that describes black. So black doesn't necessarily mean bad, it's just that it communicates authority. So there's a lot of times where you want to communicate authority in your marketing efforts, and those are the times to use black. Now, a much better color to contrast your white on the web is blue, like a dark blue, a navy blue, because Then you have some of the authoritative aspects of black, but you also have the loyalty aspects of blue. People tend to think of blue as being a loyal color. It's a cool color, so people, if you're trying to communicate that something is cold or cool, then blue is a good color. If you're trying to communicate that something is soft, then like a lighter blue is a good color. Blue is really good for building trust on the web because of the loyalty factor. So you'll notice that a lot of the big websites that sell things are primarily a white background with black text and blue highlights or blue, a little bit of blue mixed in, like Amazon.com. If you look, you'll see their site is pretty much as I just described, and then they have a little bit of gold in there with their logo, which I talked about earlier. And anyway, same with eBay. I mean, they all have a little bit of gold. Yellows and golds, I said they're basically not good on the web, yellows. But gold or a little bit more contrast, the real light yellows are really hard to see and really hard to read, but gold is good for call to action buttons because they stick out. It draws attention. You know, it's like a highlighter. But let's talk about red, because red also sticks out, but red creates the feelings in the feeling in a person that there may be an emergency. So you want to be careful about red. You do want to use it because it's an eye grabber, it's an attention getter, but you don't want to use it too much because you don't want that to be, you don't want it to say there's an emergency or there's an alarm, or you don't want to agitate people. Red tends to be an agitating color. That's why when you see all the bullfighting, the bullfighter will wave a red flag or a red sheet or whatever in front of the bull, and he'll charge that because red is an attention getter and it's an agitator. Now, there are times when in your marketing efforts you want people to feel like it's an alert or an emergency. I know I've built some pages where I wanted people to take a specific action, so I made the call to action very red, and I said the words warning because people are used to looking at signs, and that's a whole nother topic about design, but people are used to reading signs on the freeway, signs when they're out and about. So anything you can do to kind of play off of signs will help drive specific actions as well. So for example, I used the word warning in all caps and red in the past because I really wanted to grab somebody's attention, and then I had a authoritative, black text that explained why they must act now or something, like that, and that works pretty well for grabbing attention. Some of this stuff, you may think, hey, that's cheesy or whatever. I wouldn't go for that, but the truth is that a lot of people just aren't even going to notice your text if you don't do something to grab their attention. And again, if it's not read and if it's not consumed, then it's pointless. I mean, nobody's going to buy something that they don't know anything about. So, red, agitation, alerts, emergencies. Green is typically very environmental. It's also very health conscious. Green is also a color that's used to induce calmness. It's relaxing. It's a relaxing color. The WebStarts logo is green because I knew that building websites could be frustrating, and I wanted to relax people when they were thinking about building their websites. And if they think about WebStarts, I want them to be relaxed. I don't want them to be agitated. Had I made the logo red, then that could have induced feelings of agitation, which they already know that it's a frustrating process, so it's just running my own clients away. Orange is another alert color. It's a warm color. I forgot to mention green is in the cool color family too. Purples are in the cool color family. I think it's pretty self-explanatory if you think about it. But orange is another kind of draw alert to color, but it can be good for call to action buttons, things like that. It's got more contrast than the yellow when put on a white background or a black background, so it can be used in a very nice way. And then, brown is an earth tone. Brown and green, those are a couple of the earth tones, but brown's more of a warm earth tone. and I wouldn't use brown unless I was really trying to convey something as being like tough, leathery, earthy, you know, something like that. So if that's part of your message, then brown is great. If not, I'd probably just stay away from brown because it's generally the least pretty of the colors. And you know, we can go into that later, but you do want to have a good looking website. So I don't recommend using brown. So that pretty much covers everything, I guess, other than silvers and grays, which that's a nice contrast between white and black, and don't be afraid to use those. I like a real light gray in a lot of the things I do. It really softens up the look of a page and makes it look a little bit more, it adds some depth if you put a gradient on it. And a gradient means like just the slow fade from one color to another. So that's pretty much covers everything that you need to know about your color scheme. So that color scheme, again, should match the logo and all your documentation or marketing efforts that you're making. And then let's talk about credibility and endorsement. So there's basically 3 ways that you create credibility on your web pages. There are testimonials, which can come from clients or they can come from, you know, vendors or whatever. There are partner company logos, recognizable logos from other companies, and I'll talk about that. And then, which I call those endorsements, really. Those are endorsements. And then the third thing is seals and things like that. Seals, medallions, they kind of fall in the endorsement category too, but there's really these 3 things. So let me explain. On the WebStarts homepage, we've partnered with Facebook and Google, and we know that those are some of the most recognizable logos on the web, and so we display them on our web page. And what that does is subconsciously in the consumer's mind, it draws a correlation between Facebook, Google, and WebStarts, and it adds a sense of legitimacy to their subconscious mind when they go to the site, and therefore they're more likely to trust us and follow the call to action. Then we also use a lot of things like Visa, MasterCard, American Express, VeriSign, logos, seals. I call these seals. These are things that say, or, you know, top 10 download seal or whatever. You can make your own seals up, but if you use a credible seal, it'll add to your credibility. So this would be like a classic one I see is, you know, PC Magazine award winner, something like that. Money back guarantee, and then it's on like a gold medal seal. And then lastly, in the endorsement category or the credibility category, we have testimonials. Well, that's pretty self-explanatory. Those could be like quotes from some of your clients and how they're satisfied. I really like to put photos of my clients in there. It adds a sense of, it just further adds to the credibility because they're real people. And speaking of that, having human faces on your web pages is helpful too. These are not the main things that you focus on a web page, but people are used to seeing or recognizing human faces, especially when doing commerce. So if you can put actual faces of people on your pages, then people will feel more connected to your page, and they won't maybe be as likely to feel like it's a cold, unmanned website. So that brings me to the next point, which is that you need to keep your website updated, because again, this person is going to probably come back to your website 7 times before they actually buy anything. It's super critical that you constantly update some component of your homepage or of your web page. This tells them there's a real person behind it. It's not the site is not abandoned. There's tons of abandoned websites on the internet, and it's one of the most annoying things when you go to an abandoned website and you're about to do business with them, or you're about to read an article and you find out it's 10 years old and it's irrelevant because it's for an industry like tech that changes all the time. It's super annoying to me. So I like to go to websites that I know somebody's behind. And how do I know somebody's behind them? Well, because they're making changes every time I go. There's something slightly different about the page, and because, you know, whether it's a blog article, which, by the way, that's one of the reasons on WebStart's homepage at the bottom, you'll see we have a blog. We post a blog every once in a while, and it says the date that the blog was created, and it says that very strategically because we want people to know that, hey, we've been here and updated our site since a certain day. I've created other web pages where I just said right in the top right hand corner in tiny text, page last updated on such and such a day, and what happens is people come back to the site and they find out that, lo and behold, yes, the site is being updated regularly, and so then they feel more comfortable doing business with that person because they know that there's somebody actually behind the site. Okay, so we talked about keeping your website up to date to let people know that there's a real person behind the website and that it's not just abandoned like so many other websites on the internet. And now we're ready to talk about something that is very important, and that is making your content of your pages readable. Reading is something that most people just don't like to do. So one of the principles of making things readable is make them easy to read. And making it easy to read consists of several parts. Number one, use a font that you can distinguish between characters very quickly. It's annoying to me when I go to a web page and they're using something like Comic Sans or, you know, some real scripted font that looks like cursive or something because they think it's cute. Well, it might be cute and it might look interesting to you, but if it's not read, then it's not effective. So choose a font style that's very effective. I like Georgia. I like Times New Roman, which is one of the reasons why that's the default on so many computers when it comes out of the box. I mean, for readability, I don't like the look of it. I like Arial is it a good font? Tahoma, any of those real basic fonts. And by the way, there are only something like 16 web compatible fonts, so that means that fonts that will look the same on every computer that's on the web, regardless of which type of computer or software they have. And that's why there's a limited number of font selections in WebStarts, simply because the web hasn't caught up to all the different available fonts yet. There are some things that can be done that we'll be doing in the future to provide more fonts. But anyway, choose a font that's readable. I really like Georgia. That's one of my favorites. All the characters are easy to distinguish. The second thing is, don't make your text too small. If you make a 10-point or 10-pixel text that's very tiny, it's hard to read. Use 12 or 14, you know, or bigger. Especially for your headlines, you really want those to be 20 points or more. 20-point fonts, you want the characters to be easy to read. The other thing is, use lots of white space. Don't ramble on. Short paragraphs, 1 to 3 sentences are really all the more that people can handle digesting at a time. Put some white space by adding a page break between your paragraphs, and then use bullet points whenever possible. Bullet points or numbering are good because people generally are just going to quickly skim your site, and then add a little bit of contrast. Try to break up the monotony of the reading by adding bold, but not too much, just to an occasional word, or maybe using something like red to draw attention to a particular word or sentence in the paragraph. Another thing that you may want to avoid doing is underlining text to draw attention to it. On the web, this is not a hot idea because anything with an underline inherently implies that it's a link, meaning it can be clicked on. And if you underline text and it can't be clicked on, and someone goes to click on it, they're just going to think it's a broken link, in which case that's going to reflect negatively on you, and you don't want that. So avoid using underline Unless it is something clickable and it is a link, then you definitely want it to be underlined. And I say you really want it to be underlined and then be in blue, which are the default colors and styles applied to a link since the inception of the modern web browser. So when people see that, they automatically assume that that's something that's clickable. And so you want them to assume that something's clickable if it is clickable. And so having blue text with an underline is good in that situation. That brings me to another point. Try to avoid using the exact same color of blue text that is used by default in a web browser to indicate that something's a link, because just like you don't want people to assume something is a link just because it's underlined when it's actually not a link, the same applies with blue text. But in general, use black text, use like a dark charcoal gray style text if you want to make your text look a little softer and give a little bit more of a modern appearance. Then the next thing that you want to do, so we covered color, font style, font size, font color. Make sure you're always having a lot of contrast between the background and your font. We talked about that a little bit earlier. White backgrounds with black text is the very best and most readable. We talked about white space, bullet points. Make your text easy to read, skimmable. I can never emphasize that enough. That means that you can just run your eyes on it. Oh, everybody reads from left to right, so try to keep that in mind when laying out your text. You don't want to break up continuity in your reading and make people have to scan the page to know where to pick up the next line of text that you would like them to read. So once you've created your design and you've followed a lot of the recommendations that I've made, or all the recommendations that I've made, the next thing you're going to need to do is track your results. You can know everything there is to know about web design, web page layout, selling on the internet, but each business has its own idiosyncrasies, and therefore it's absolutely crucial that you do everything you can to statistically reduce the chance of your site visitor leaving without buying, and then you test and you measure using good tracking, looking at your results, and making small tweaks to your system until you find the absolute best, most optimized layout for your pages. And the way you do this is you need to find a good tracking software. At WebStarts, we have tracking we can build into your website. We can show you exactly where your website visitors came from, which keywords they typed into a search engine, whether or not they ended up filling out the form, whether or not those people that filled out the form ended up buying the product, even if they responded to the 6th, 7th, 9th, 12th email. We can track from the follow-up emails to know exactly which email they finally decided to purchase on, and we can make little tweaks and changes all the way along in the process to try to get the most out of our marketing efforts. So it's absolutely critical that you test, you measure, and have a great piece of tracking in place when implementing these marketing strategies online. Some of you may wonder during the video why I'm in my car and I'm driving, and the truth is once you achieve a certain level of success, the thing that you're going to value the most in life is time, not necessarily money. And quite frankly, it takes time to share and train people on this information, and I don't need to do it. It's something that I could keep to myself, but I really love to see people succeed, and it's just a matter of finding the time to do it. And when I'm out and about and I'm driving around, I'm sitting in my car right now at my kid's baseball practice. It's a good time to make use of and record this. So that's why I'm in my car. I hope you can deal with that. This is good information. It doesn't degrade the quality of information, and you're going to figure out when you come. So another note about tracking is you need real-time tracking. Tracking that reports several hours or a day later or doesn't have consistent reporting times isn't going to give you the data that you need on the fly to make the necessary changes to your website, especially when you're paying for advertising, because if, for example, you're advertising on Google AdWords, you can spend several $100s in an hour, and if you don't have the right tracking in place, then you're not going to be able to know, number one, whether those are legitimate clicks coming from Google search engine, number two, whether those clicks are the type of person that actually ends up becoming a paying client, and number three, whether the changes that you make to your website are actually converting more or less people or prompting them to take the next step or call to action. Okay, so we talked about building an effective homepage or landing page and capturing leads and then sending emails to your leads. So now let me talk a little bit about sending follow-up emails. Number one, we already established that it takes about 7 contacts to a prospect before they buy with your company. And so we're going to need to send at least 7 emails to the prospect, and then we send the first email right away, and in that first email we send the most potent offer that we possibly can, because we're currently top of mind with our prospect. In the next few emails, we want to send those typically a day apart, and one each day for the first 3 or 4 emails. This is a tough situation because you got to keep a balance between generating spam complaints and capitalizing on your prospect while they are in the mood to buy or looking for your product or service. But I say don't risk it. Send emails on the first, second, third, maybe even the 4th day to the prospect. If you generate spam complaints, you can always back off, and if you make the content of your emails attractive enough and well balanced enough along with your offer, and you're providing good information, and you're unsubscribing people that don't want to be in your list, you should be fine. So I like to send like 1, 2, 3 emails the first 3 days, then I spread it out to every 2 days, then every 3 days, then every 4 days, every 5 days, all the way out for 6 months or a year, and then I send broadcasts once per week, so they get 4 broadcast emails per week, and I recommend that you do something similar. Let me talk about broadcast emails in a moment. So what is a broadcast email? Well, a broadcast email is an email that you send to your entire list of prospects all at the same time. And this is a very powerful way to bring in a great deal of money very quickly. I know other people that have online businesses and have run several online businesses. And I can assure you that the most powerful way to bring in money very quickly is to send a broadcast email. Send an email out with a special offer, a really super compelling offer to the entire list of prospects all at the same time. Now, there's certain strategies that you want to use when sending these emails. One is you want to be careful not to send too many broadcasts, because you don't want to risk being considered spam. Another thing is you don't want to send these emails at the wrong time. There's an optimum time to send these emails. The best time to send an email if you're selling a business type service is Tuesday afternoon. Market studies show that Tuesday afternoon business people are the least busy. So on Monday they're usually coming into work. They have a pile of things that stacked up on their desk and in their email account from the weekend, and they need to work through that to try to and catch up. So sending an email on the weekend to a business person isn't a good idea. Sending an email on Monday isn't a good idea, because it'll simply get lost in a heap of other emails. But sending on Tuesday afternoons about 2 o'clock Eastern is the time that people are the least busy, so you're most likely to go right to the inbox, and they'll have time to actually read and respond to your email. And so that's the time you want to target for most things. Now, there are some exceptions to the rule. I've had some other companies where we promoted things like movies, music downloads, those sort of things. And when we did entertainment-based products, we found that Saturdays were the best day. And we do a lot of promotions on Friday night into Saturday morning, that sort of thing. And we would do a time-sensitive offer, and we would have a great response on Saturday, better than we would have on a Tuesday, because when you're selling leisure products, those things are top of mind on the weekend. So I'll continue with more about email marketing in a moment. Okay, so we've been talking about sending follow-up emails and then also broadcast emails. So you need a good platform to do both of those things. The platform should have the ability to allow users to unsubscribe on their own. It should allow you to maintain a list of people that you don't want to mail to so that you can avoid getting your emails blocked by avoid getting on a spam cop list or whatever. And that email platform has to be able to schedule emails in advance for the follow-ups in a sequence. In other words, you need to be able to say, we're going to send this email on day 1, this email on day 3, this email on day 7, so on and so forth. You need good tracking, you need good design tools, and the good news is so far everything we've talked about we offer at WebStarts, because I built it to achieve all these goals. So looking at your follow-up emails need to be written in a way that they'll get opened and responded to, and I have a whole segment that I'm going to do nothing but unveil the secrets to writing amazing emails. So you don't want to miss that segment that's coming up in the series. But for now, we're just talking about how frequently to follow up and how to follow up with emails, which are through the pre-scheduled follow-up system, and then also sending the broadcast, which are emails to all your clients all at once.